Just to begin, I got to say, this is, I think, the third conversation I've had in this series.
Mm.
And in the week preceding every conversation, I've had the most incredible synchronicities. So I've been delving into Artemis lore and refreshing myself on your book on the Core and the sections on Artemis. And last night there was three deer who came like right up to the house and were just kind of chilling. And normally my little dog would be at the window barking, scaring them off. But she just sat there looking out the window, deer just mildly eating leaves off the tree and drinking from the little pond out front. And it was, what's the word, idyllic in a way. And I just felt like the presence of Artemis.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just
Mm.
incredible. I mean, that's rare because we have a lot of deer around here, but they're not kind of the domesticated deer that we get in the city. They're still pretty wild, and so to have them come up right up to the house like that was really
Right.
kind of special.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I think there's something to be said for sure about when we begin attuning to these different archetypal figures and what they personify, in life. Uh, it's like they begin to meet us, in these really beautiful ways. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had been feeling like a little distance from Artemis. Like
Mm.
Hermes, when I start getting into Hermes, he's like right there, you know.
Yeah.
But like with Artemis, I was feeling this kind of distance. I was like, I don't know if I'm like really connecting with her. And then just like yesterday and today, it's been like, oh, she's here. But it
Right.
took a while. It took like this kind of courtship, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I think that makes a lot of sense because of the very nature of our lives, living in like we live in a post-industrial um, digital civilization. We are so embedded within, in many ways, sort of Athena's world. Like we are embedded within the civilized world. And what does Artemis personify but wilderness? Wilderness, both in the sense of physical nature, being in the wild, wild animals, but also in terms of the inner world, the wilderness of the instinctual dimension of life and our feel like and our emotional life, and you know civilization, the work of civilization, both affects outer nature in the development of houses and utilities and all these things that we in the Western world for sure benefit from. But in terms of our inner life, civilization also um, separates from and shifts and alters our relationship to the instinctual and emotional dimension of our nature. So I think in many ways, Artemis is uh, like, yeah, that how do we attune to her? It takes doing and it takes consciousness, because of how the way we are, by nature of our inner and outer civilization.
Hmm. Hmm. I was curious because I'd reached out to a number of people to ask to invite people to contribute to the series. And you stepped forward and said, can we talk about Artemis? Or I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
talk about Artemis. And I'm wondering, like, what is it about her that you feel is important for people to know or
Mm.
to connect to?
Mm. Well, I think this whole notion of how civilized we are, consciously and unconsciously, is a really huge piece. And I like drew together a couple of things that I thought just to offer, your listeners, because it's such a profoundly important piece of in terms of our sort of psychological sensitivity. And the first thing is that, so I'm going to try to thread these things together. I have an insight from the archetypal psychologist Jeanette Paris. I've got a really important passage from Jung, and then I've got a poem that I want to read you. So I've kind of got a little bit of a plan, if that's okay. But what I think in terms of what is so significant about Artemis is the sense of our relationship to nature. And by nature, I mean it like capital N, archetypal, the archetypal power and potency of nature. And Artemis personifies this because where we see her in the myths and in the poems that come to us from, the ancient Greeks, is that she's always in the vast wilderness. Her domain is an imaginal place called Arcadia. It's a place that humans can't go. It's totally unaffected by human civilizing impulses. And that sort of purity of the wilderness as an imaginal landscape is also on another level reflected in the fact that she's a chore or a virgin goddess, meaning that where on the one hand the landscape itself is untouched, she too is untouched. And I think that there's something really profoundly important about that dimension of experience and the psyche, which is the places of where we are or experience a sense of pure essential beingness, unaffected by other people's needs, technological media, institutional values. You see what I mean?
Yeah, even societal norms.
Exactly. That's right. That's right. So I think perhaps if I were to sort of try to condense it to one thing with you, I would say that Artemis is so profoundly significant because of how she sanctifies virginity or the virgin pure places as a metaphorical. It's a metaphor for the untouched dimensions of our psyche, and then we can extend that in terms of the world. And that's what I was talking about, sort of laying out in a much bigger way in my book on the chore, which is that the chore archetype, which Artemis personifies in a really specific way, has to do with what it is to be unto oneself, that part of us that is undivided from ourselves, which we might talk about as sort of our essential nature, that sense of beingness that I have as an individual that in its own way is independent from who I am in relationship to my partner and my students and my clients and my family, like all these really important roles that are part of my sense of self. But what is it? Who am I at its most, at my deepest, perhaps even most like sacred core? The chore personifies that sense of self.
Yeah. And there's something about her isolation or seclusion that just points me toward, okay, if I want to get in touch with that part of myself, I may have to retreat from, you know, duties of family, my role in the community. So I may
That's
have to
right.
take these periods of retreat and isolation in order to connect with that core essence.
That's right. That's right. So, right. So we could say that solitude is one of the central ways that we can cultivate a relationship to our core interiority, or our Artemisian, our relationship to Artemis. And see, this goes to that this little quote I wanted to read from Jeanette Paris, who is a really brilliant archetypal psychologist, and I can't recommend her books, Pagan Meditations and Pagan Grace, enough, because of the way she illuminates how the gods show up in our lives. But this is one of my favorite passages of hers about Artemis, which is from the book Pagan Meditations. She says, Artemis comes to sanctify solitude, natural and primitive living, to which we may all return whenever we find it necessary to belong only to ourselves. An Amazon and infallible archer, Artemis guarantees our resistance to a domestication that would be too complete. See, and I
Hmm.
think that's the thing that you were just talking about, Brian. Um, we become domesticated by, all of our life responsibilities and relationships, and by nature of just living in our worlds. We become domesticated, and Artemis personifies the breaking away from our being so safely contained within those roles, in order to come back in touch with, in a way, something primitive in us. And by that, I mean raw, as in unshaped and directed by expectations, responsibilities, and the list goes on, in terms of in terms of the structures of our lives.
Hmm.
And how do we do that? We can only do that if we actually pull away,
Hmm.
right? We actually retreat and disconnect from those spaces.
Hmm.
Yeah.